What do you think of when you hear the word mindfulness? Perhaps you think of Buddhism, which would make some sense because the word mindfulness, as it's commonly used, comes from the Buddhist tradition. But maybe you've encountered mindfulness in other contexts. In the areas of education and business and psychology, there's been a growing interest in a secularized version of mindfulness. So maybe the word mindfulness evokes an image more like this woman who obviously has plenty of time to sit on a dock and meditate. She probably gets all of her news from public radio. She drives a hybrid. She only buys organic groceries. These days, mindfulness meditation is often thought about as some kind of woo-woo self-help practice for the social elite. And it's true that mindfulness practices appear to have many benefits for personal well-being, including improvements in certain types of attention, increased resilience to stress, and moderate reductions in symptoms of anxiety and depression. But mindfulness and its benefits go beyond self-help. Mindfulness enables us to contribute to a kinder, more just society. Before I elaborate on that, it's useful to take a look at the definition of mindfulness because many exist. The definition I like to use comes from the Mindful Awareness Research Center at UCLA. Mindful awareness is paying attention to present moment experiences with openness, curiosity, and a willingness to be with what is. And I'll highlight some of the important components of that definition. First of all, what is a present moment experience? Whatever you're thinking about right now, whatever emotion you're feeling, whatever physical sensation you're noticing, that's your present moment experience. Maybe you're thinking about the words I'm saying. Maybe you're worrying about something that's going to happen later today. Maybe you're reminiscing about something that happened 2 weeks ago. Maybe you're noticing that your stomach is starting to grumble. All of those are examples of possible present moment experiences that you could be having. And mindfulness is simply paying attention to those present moment experiences because often we don't pay attention to them. The other piece of this definition that's important deals with how we relate to our present moment experiences. And that is with openness, curiosity, and a willingness to be with what is. And what that means is that we allow our present moment experience to be there. We take interest in our present moment experience. And we're curious about it. Even if it's something that is unpleasant to us, we don't try to push it away. We don't try to get rid of it. Mindfulness meditation is a type of practice that we use where we set aside time to pay attention to our present moment experiences, to accept what they are, to be curious about them, so that when we're out in the big wide world, we can practice mindfulness. So mindfulness is a very internally focused practice. How could that help us engage with the world to make it a better place? I think there are several ways it can do this. Mindfulness helps us to identify and to acknowledge our biases. Humans process information incredibly quickly. We're really efficient at this. We immediately categorize things as soon as we encounter them in our environment, green apples and red apples. This is a basic perceptual process. And we also immediately categorize people. We categorize people according to their race and their gender and their age and other culturally important social categories. And we've learned to associate social categories with certain characteristics, and that's known as a stereotype. We've learned what psychologists have called implicit associations. And when we encounter a person and we categorize that individual according to ability or sexual orientation or age or whatever social category, those stereotypes get automatically activated, even if we don't endorse them. And if we're not paying attention, we use those stereotypes to make judgments and to guide our behaviors. One dreary Saturday morning, my husband and I were going to garage sales in the area, and we encountered a woman who was holding her garage sale in her driveway. And it started to rain, so she began to move her things into the garage. But it wasn't an ordinary garage. It had been converted into a pretty elaborate woodworking shop. It had saws, it had planer and joiner and all these pieces of equipment. And as she was placing her knickknacks onto the table saw, and as she was hanging clothes from the hoses of the dust collection system, I thought I would make a funny joke. And so I was going to ask her, "So what, your husband wouldn't move his stuff out so you could have your garage sale in here?" But before I could ask that question, my husband asked her, "How long have you been doing woodworking?" And she answered, "About 7 years." And I was mortified. I hadn't actually asked the question, thankfully, because of my husband. But I was mortified that I was going to ask that question because I am a social psychologist, and we study stereotypes. We're not supposed to use stereotypes. But I wasn't being mindful. I wasn't paying attention. The implicit associations I have between man and woodworking and woman and garage sale influenced my assumptions. That day, those implicit associations didn't have a direct impact on my behavior. But implicit associations do have an impact on behavior. They influence nonverbal behaviors in interpersonal interactions, in face-to-face conversations. And implicit racial and gender biases are associated with biased evaluations of job candidates. We can notice when these stereotypes occur. We can notice when they pop into our minds, and we can take a step back and put some distance, some space between our immediate reactions and our more deliberate responses. And there's some evidence to show that this is the case. Even brief mindfulness exercises can reduce implicit racial biases and age biases, and they can reduce discriminatory behaviors among white college students. So mindfulness could allow us to break that link between stereotypes and discriminatory behaviors. They can help us to engage with others rather than to avoid them. They can help us to provide people with opportunities rather than to place barriers in their way. And that's all well and good when we're motivated to be unbiased. But what about those instances when we feel like our biases are perfectly justified? Well, mindfulness can also help reduce defensiveness. Prejudice is not just made up of stereotypes. It's not just made up of beliefs about a group of people. Implicit associations can carry with them really strong negative emotions like fear and anger and disgust. And those emotions are really unpleasant to experience. But they also challenge the image we have of ourselves as fair and good people. And that's really uncomfortable as well. And we want to get away from that discomfort. We want to turn away from it. We want to get rid of it as quickly as possible. And how we do that is through defensive responding. And all too often, the way we do that is through dehumanization. We demonize an entire group of people, and we use derogatory language to describe them as inferior or dangerous. And then we conclude that it's okay if we don't treat them humanely. We don't have to, because they're less than human. They're exceptions to our moral standards. When we practice mindfulness, we can allow that discomfort to be there, and we can admit to our prejudices rather than scramble to try to justify them. We can thoughtfully examine the possible origins of those negative emotions. And those negative emotions will still occur. They'll still be there when we encounter someone from that particular social category. But we can make a conscious decision not to act on those emotions. And there's some promising evidence to support this as well, that mindfulness training, both long-term mindfulness training like the type that Buddhist monks experience, and shorter-term mindfulness training can reduce the defensive interpersonal responding that people have when they feel threatened. So mindfulness allows us to keep in touch with our core values and to behave in ways that are consistent with our core values. Mindfulness can help with those automatic biases and the harmful effects of the automatic biases and the harmful effects of defensiveness. Mindfulness can also work in proactive ways to help us develop feelings of goodwill toward others. Mindfulness allows us to recognize our common humanity. We can take someone else's perspective. The clarity that mindfulness provides us allows us to feel empathy for others without our own preconceived notions and defensiveness getting in the way. And instead of turning away from someone else's suffering in order to reduce our own distress, we can allow that distress to be there so that we can be motivated to reduce their suffering. We can develop compassion for others. Loving kindness meditation is a type of meditation that helps to enhance compassion. In loving kindness meditation, we contemplate good wishes toward ourselves and toward others, and it usually consists of a number of phrases such as, may you be safe, may you be healthy, may you be happy, may you be free from worry, may you live with ease. In loving kindness meditation, we send out good wishes and feelings of warmth and kindness toward people we know well, and then we extend that toward people we don't know. There's not much research on loving kindness meditation as of yet, but the research that has been done indicates that loving kindness meditation can increase empathy for people who are suffering. And it can affect behavioral responses to other people's suffering as well, such as increased generosity in monetary transactions and willingness to help others who are in need of assistance. So I'd like you to take a minute just to focus on what you're feeling right now in the present moment. Just notice what it is that you might be thinking, what it is that you might be feeling. Notice it and allow it to be there. Now, it can be really difficult to know what we as individuals can do to make the world a better place. It's really discouraging when we're faced with the harsh realities of injustice and hatred. When we engage in mindfulness, we can acknowledge our biases. We can understand and engage with our defensive responses. And we can recognize our connections with others, all of which will influence our behaviors in ways that will promote kindness and that will promote social justice. So if we can make a commitment to be mindful, we could potentially change the world. Now, understanding mindfulness is not going to cure all of the social ills. Some people think that mindfulness is a panacea, and it's not. There's a lot of hype about it, but it's not a panacea. And even if everyone practiced mindfulness, we would still have social problems because humans are imperfect. But if we can make a commitment to be aware of our present moment experiences, to build resilience in the face of discomfort, and to cultivate compassion for others, then we do have some hope. Hope can begin in the present moment. Thank you for your kind attention.